And we're live. All right. Sounds good. Looks good. Hopefully, everything sounds good. We'll find that out later on down the road, depending on if we get any folks in to pipe up and say hello and let me know if they can how the audio sounds. If not, I'll find out on the playback for myself later on. Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins-Treworgy, also known as Byron Sidious. This is another break time story time. Did not do the break time story time yesterday because it was very windy out here, and I had not previously secured a bad weather location to do these readings on my break at work, if that should happen. I have a something of a backup spot. I don't know how feasible or functional it will be in the future. I do know that once the snow starts to fly, ooh boy, howdy, I better have myself a different spot arranged for doing this on my breaks. Preferably someplace where I'm not going to freeze to death because it's Minnesota. It gets fairly bitter come winter time. But anyhow, enough of that balderdash. Let us proceed and get into today's offering. We proceed where we left off in A Midwestern Yankee in King Ovin's Court, a Kathy Potts novel written by yours truly. We proceed with Chapter 5, Into the Hills. The duo stopped at the side of the road 100 yards before it turned out of sight between the hills Kathy first saw when they arrived in Ammermit's kingdom. Daguerreau tapped the buckle atop the drawstring on his green wool rucksack and rummaged about, pulling out a pair of oranges and a wedge of cheese wrapped in some kind of wax paper. He used one claw to cut the wedge in half, offering it and an orange to Kathy as they sat by a fallen log. Thanks, she said, peeling her fruit right away. So, anything to look out for in the hills? Hmm, nothing more than we normally would. Rick clan goblins used to ambush and raid trading caravans in this area, but the king dispatched rangers to chase them off a year ago. Rangers are the king's watchmen in the wilds, capable soldiers. He took a huge bite of his cheese and washed it down with water from his canteen. Why'd you knock that buckle before you opened the bag? Ah, yes, this. Daguerreau pulled his bag over, looked up for a moment, and tapped the buckle. He reached in and withdrew from it a heavy leather-bound book. He put it back in and grinned. It's a change bag, first created by gnomes. You put things in, focus on making them be in the bag but unavailable, and then you tap the buckle. The inside of the bag changes to a new space, and you put other things in. Then all you have to do is think about what it is that you want, tap the buckle, and it will be there. Of course, you have to put the desired item in there first, he added seriously. Oh, that's neat. Can I get one of those? They're very rare, Miss Kathy. The king may be able to give you one, but I wouldn't bet on it. If nothing else, it may be that you can find one at market in one of the outer city markets. It will be pricey. Kathy resisted the urge to react to his answer, to ask what he meant by outer city. Instead, she looked down at the ground, picking at the grass between her feet. So, do you know what kind of magic I'll be able to use? If I learn how to, I mean. Daguerreau chewed his food slowly now, not looking at her. When he did speak, his reply came in an awkward hush. Miss Kathy, I'm not very skilled at magic. myself. I have trouble seeing such things in others unless I witness them using an evocation. I can get a general sense of their potential, but that's all. Kathy thought she understood what he was saying. He can't tell. He's a warrior, a soldier. Sure, he obviously has powerful magic swords, but the magic is all in the weapons. It's not in him. Hey, no problem, she said out loud, patting him companionably on the arm. I'm sure the king could tell me. Daggero looked down at his arm, then up at her, his eyes soft. What? I'm sorry. I'm not used to such signs of friendship or affection being used towards myself. My duties as High Knight require much etiquette and regulation. I get that, but don't you have a wife or kids or just good friends? Neither, he said. Okay. What about regular friends? You said you're Lord of the Watch, right? So, like, you're a cop. Close enough analogy, I suppose. Well, don't you have any cop buddies among the Watch? Yes, I have a few friends, Daggero said wistfully. But my primary role is as High Knight. That means being in charge of the Royal Guard, the knights who protect the inner city and investigate the worst crimes throughout the kingdom. I don't get much chance to be around those men and women I would call friend. Kathy patted him on the shoulder comfortingly. Well, at least you've got someone. Life's too hard to not have any friends. They finished their brief lunch and hitched up, taking to the road once again. As they came around a corner and entered the hills, Kathy could see in the middle distance a wagon, led by what she assumed was a horse at first glance. Daggero immediately turned to her and gripped her by the shoulders. Kathy, hear me well, he said in a rushed whisper. What you see ahead of us is a merchant wagon pulled by a dromare. That in and of itself is not a worry. But the merchant himself is a Wefari. They are tricksters, Kathy, and they are ever deceptive. They always try to make trades with customers that leave them with crippling disadvantages. What do you mean? Kathy asked. Let's say you see a belt that you would like on his wagon. He'll trade it to you for a minute of your time. That's all? I just have to listen to him? No. It could mean many things. Most disastrously, he could take a minute of your life, sending you into a ghost like state randomly, while he gets to freeze time locally around himself. Daggero glanced in the direction of the wagon, then back to Kathy, who he could see was getting a little frightened now. It's all up to how they choose to interpret the deal. So, let me do all the talking and bargaining. Do you understand? Kathy nodded vehemently, following Daggero as he led the way down the road. When they were 20 feet away, the wagon stopped, and the driver hopped off of his bench. Kathy marveled at the animal and merchant both. The animal looked like a camel covered in blue and yellow patches of fur, three droopy, sleepy eyes blinking out of its face. It smelled strongly of rotted seaweed and sun-bloated dead fish. The stench made Kathy's gag reflex kick before she roped it in. As for the driver, what Daguerreau had called a Wefari, Kathy could hardly have felt less intimidated or more fascinated. Dressed in a motley assortment of ragged robes and two cloaks, one yellow and one the kind of robin's egg blue, the creature stood perhaps 4 feet tall. A large, pointy brown wizard's hat sat atop the head, shrouded in inky darkness, from which shone two brilliant golden light highlights. Red, four-fingered gloves covered its hands, matching its floppy boots in hue. She thought it one of the cutest little things that she'd ever seen. It walked back along the side of its tarp-covered wagon, waddling like a penguin, pulling little levers. Kathy mentally pushed down a girlish squeak with an effort. You better not laugh, she thought. Not after Daguerreau's little speech there. When the referee pulled the last lever, the tarp all rolled up, revealing a mobile storefront with shelves and shelves of merchandise. The short creature waddled up and said something to them in a quick, greasy sounding language. What did he say? Kathy asked. I have no idea, Daggero groused. Theirs is a native tongue, language that very few speak. He made a talking hand signal, then pointed at one of his pointed furry ears and shook his head. The referee made some gestures of his own, then pressed his hands together until a soft light shone from the tips of his gloves. The light dropped like a feather to the ground and flashed, creating a ring on the ground 100 yards wide, with them in its center. Uh, me speaky. You hear? Good, good, the creature said in a high pitched Mickey Mouse voice. Yes, we hear you now, said Daggero. Kathy saw an orange glow beginning to rim its eyes, present but steady, unchanging in the Kenyon's face. You look at me things! Find like, maybe trade me. Kathy thought about Daggero's warning, yet couldn't help feeling friendly towards the creature. It didn't give her any sense of dread or fear, and if pressed, she couldn't say she understood how it could present a threat. Daggero himself, however, with his deadly skill as a soldier and whatever powers he wielded, unseen as yet by Kathy, probably posed far greater danger, based on first impressions. Yet, looks could be deceiving, she knew. After all, before that day, she had only suspected the Aether plane existed in some form, and she hadn't known its name proper. Most people didn't have a clue that this other world existed, and so close to their own. She would be cautious here with that truth in mind. She followed Daggero to the wagon's side, poring over the contents of the wagon. One item caught her attention right away, eliciting a gasp. Kathy reached up and pulled Daggero's ear down next to her mouth, pointing at the item. That's a Game Boy Advance, she said. A video game from my world. What's he doing with one of those? Daggero turned his head, his mouth by her ear. There are other awakened in the kingdom, and other adepts who he has likely had contact with. This is something I should keep in mind. Now, he said, stepping up to the wagon and grabbing a long belt. It looked like snakeskin to Kathy. This, I can detect, is enchanted. How? I do not know. But it feels charged. Yes, yes, the wee Farid chimed, looking like Marvin the Martian as he waddle ran over towards them. Dragon flesh belt, 5 charges left on. Make bang and stabby stuff no hurt. Make skin strong like dragon. Do you want? Hmm. Not from me, but she could use a helping hand like this, said Daggero. What do you want for it? The referee folded its arms and leaned back, eyelights dimming. Finally, it snapped its fingers, pointed at one of Daggero's blades. Sword! Belt for sword! The little man started to bounce up and down, but his excitement was short lived. Daggero tossed the belt to the ground and planted his feet wide, growling at the little man. Kathy, taken aback by this hostility, flinched away from him. The orange light that had been beginning to circle around Daggero's eyes now blazed from them, and from between his bared teeth. When he spoke, it was with a strange twin harmony of growling voices. How dare you? Daggero snarled. He drew his weapons, Boon and Bane. As soon as the Wefari saw them, it let out a frightened little screech and backpedaled, tripping over its own ragged robes and falling on its back. One hand now held out to ward Daggero off. I see thou knows mine blades for what they are. Behold, Boon and Bane, the great twin blades of the sacred and the profane. Daggero lunged forward and landed astride the Wefari's upper body, weapons held resting against his own shoulders. He leaned down close enough to the darkness that comprised the FRE's face that his breath caused the brim of the wizard's hat to flutter. A mad smile spread across Daguerreau's face, one worthy of a demon. Thou art foolish to seek such things as you cannot handle, he rasped. To suggest I surrender either blade for any reason short of mine own death is ignorance of the highest order. I should pummel thee senseless for this impudence. Kathy had seen enough when Daguerreau landed on the little guy. Though she was terrified of what he would do to her, she had gained a running start, and now, Daguerreau's threat out of the cannon's mouth, she rammed into his side in a tackle that, had he not been wearing armor, might have broken bones. As it was, he merely grunted and rolled with her to a stop a few yards away. Stunned, he couldn't move as she climbed up off of him. When he did try to get up, she jabbed a finger down at him violently and shouted, "Stay!" Daguerreau went still in shock, boon and bane still in hand. She went over to the Wefari, who was just standing up, brushing himself off as he visibly trembled. She knelt down in front of him, eyes softened, and, she hoped, inviting. "Hey," she said, hands up and empty at her sides. "Are you okay?" The little man said nothing, but exploded into a tight embrace around her shoulders. "Oh, thank you," the Wefari said through frightened sobs. "Thank you, help me. Thank Big Big." He sniffled. "Me not no dog man Daguerreau. Me hear tales Daguerreau. Meet many Kenin. Never meet him. Him scary. Him crazy." "Well, he's not going to hurt you, okay?" Kathy said, looking back at the Kenin knight. He stood off to one side, hanging his his eyes closed. Head. I meant head. Only has one head. Sorry. His swords were once more sheathed. She patted the Wefari on the back for comfort, then eased herself away from the embrace. The eyelights blazed suddenly up at her. You save! You have belt. No trade, yes. Gift. Trade my life for belt, yes. And me find other way, thank, later, the little man said exuberantly, hopping up and down. What's your name? Me? I'm Kathy. Kathy Potts, she said, giving a pretend curtsy as best she could without a dress or skirt to twitch. "Aye, chappie," said the Wefari. He sprinted to the wagon in his waddling fashion, resetting the levers until the tarp rolled back in place. He then hopped back up onto the seat of the wagon, grabbing the dromare's reins. He looked back at Kathy over his shoulder, pointing back toward the dropped belt on the ground. "Bye bye, Kathy. We thank you. Help you later, Big Big." The wagon rolled away much more quickly than she would have thought it could. Kathy headed towards Daguerreau, and when he began to look up, she shoved him as hard as she could in the chest, though she barely budged him. "What the hell was that? That light in your eyes, the voices like something out of a poltergeist movie threatening that poor little guy? You want to tell me what set you off so bad?" "Imbalance," Daguerreau said. "I have always strove for balance. Most of the time, my aggressive nature is kept at bay, but we Kenyan are highly territorial and possessive. He sought to ruin the balance of boon and bane, and that must never happen. Those two factors, the imbalance, the desire for something that is mine by right, these factors combined cause me to lose control of my temper. Does that happen often? Thankfully, no. Good, because if you lose it on someone who doesn't deserve it again, I'm out of here. I'll figure out my own way back, and you can explain to your king why I left." She folded her arms over her chest, tapping her left foot. "What about the orange lights?" "Ah, that. That comes from the power of the word of the night," said Daguerreau. He crouched down, picking up the dragonflesh belt. "When summoned upon, The word of the night grants the user the ability to see through all deceptions, to force the truth from anyone questioned. It also instills fear in the hearts of a knight's enemies, diminishing their combat ability. I see, Kathy said, relaxing her posture a little. So those specters, those scorpions that you called them, you were fighting them. Uh, that that started to kick in this aggression. I summoned the power in the event those two were not alone. Yes, the word of the night has its drawbacks, however. Chiefly, it makes the use of illusions nearly impossible for the wielder, and renders them also incapable of lies. Not that most knights could lie, anyhow. We are sworn from early service to speak true. Kathy shook her head. I don't understand all of this, but I want you to know that I still think you're good people, she said. But I gotta be honest, you kind of scare me now. He nodded, then held the belt out to her. She stepped over, took it, held it this way and that. How does this work? You wear it around your waist like a belt. If you want to activate its enchantment, grasp the buckle and shake it once. I have used similarly enchanted belts in my time. Kathy strapped the belt on, sensing its dormant magic just beneath the surface. She can envision in her mind exactly how the belt worked, what she would look like with it activated. Her skin, in her mind's eye, took on a thick green layer of scales, nigh impenetrable natural armoring. Yet there were small slits where the scales overlapped that would be vulnerable. The smell of desert winds wafted into her nose, an olfactory illusion stemming from her mental image. Kathy, Daggero was saying, shaking her shoulder gently. She came up out of her reverie then, the visualization terminated. Oh, sorry, she said. Um, we're good. We should get going again. Agreed, and I shall leave once more. Perhaps if we run into anyone else out here, you should join the conversation. I can tell that you're better with people, perhaps, than I might be. Kathy agreed, but before they could continue, she had one more question for him. Daggero, yes. If you had not been so fixated on him when I hit you, what would you have done to me? Miss Kathy, I promised His Majesty the King I would bring you back to him. I never promised it would be in one piece. With a shudder, Kathy looked down, and the two continued on through the hills. Thus concludes Chapter 5 of A Midwestern Yankee in King Ovin's Court. And thank you, Jake. Thank you, Tech the Noob, for doing the old, keep reading, muscle through it when I flubbed up and said heads, implying that Daggero has two heads. No, he doesn't, just one head of a German Shepherd. So, powering through. So that, yes, that is Chapter 5 of A Midwest. I'm getting lucky, and I'm not sure how I got so lucky that these chapters seem to be roughly right around a half an hour each for reading out loud. Um, I didn't, obviously it wasn't planned. I wrote this book back in 2012, 2013. So it's just kind of lining up nicely. I think it may have something to do with I try not to make my chapters much more than 15 to 2,000 words. I used to be really bad about it. Like the first few emoji war, uh, the first few books that I wrote for the Templarian Tales series, um, many of the chapters stretched on a good 7, 8, 9, 10, 12,000 words just for one chapter. And then I might have a chapter that was only 2 or 3,000 words. I tend not to be uniform, but I try not to go overboard and extend out any one chapter too long. Chapters tend to be thematic. For me, in my fantasy work, they tend to have one or two scenes, like one major scene and one minor scene or event taking place within the confines of each chapter. Ah, yes, the days of blog TV. Those were the days. They really were. But these little dribs and drabs, it's it's an opportunity, and I'm taking advantage of it as I can. You know, with you got kids, Jake. You know what it's like to have a job and to have kids and to be still wanting to do stuff online. Um, Making the time, making the room for it can be a challenge, and I am just utilizing the resources that I have available to me in terms of using the break time in order to hop on and do these quick little live shows. It's a matter of trying to maintain consistency. That's going to be the challenge. That's really all. Um, and here's a sidebar for you. Um, Substack is premiering or has been premiering for the last week a live streaming functionality through Substack, but right now it's only available to Substack's bestsellers and top influencers, which makes me want to snarl until blood comes out of my eyes. Not just because I want to slap Hamish McKenzie back and forth and Chris Best and smack his head into a fucking wall and say, hey, what happened to you wanted to be this to be a service and a place for every size of author, of storyteller, of writer, that you wanted everyone to have opportunities here that they don't have elsewhere. You didn't want to drag the same kind of uh, you know stepladder elitism that has infested so many other sites, and now you're doing that exact same fucking thing. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, you see, I don't understand. Like, they say they're going to eventually roll it out to everybody on Substack. Okay, that's how they did it with audio. That's how they're doing it with video. Okay, I'll I'll just kind of hold my tongue and say fine. I'll just wait until it's available for everyone. But I'm not necessarily convinced that I'm going to want to use it. Substack is a tremendous place for writers, for authors, for storytellers. And when I first signed on to the service almost 4 years ago, I saw it as a beacon of hope, a return to the prominence of the written word as a vehicle for communication and for conveying meaning and for storytelling again. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy doing my audiobook presentations. I enjoy doing my live readings because it is a form of storytelling. And there is something that it's a little different. It brings something, it brings another element to the sharing of the narrative, to have a live audience, to have people who are listening right then and there. That is really fascinating to me. I enjoy that campfire setting, that almost that allure of the old style bard. I'm not talking Dungeons and Dragons bard where you try to fuck everything that moves with a pulse and it can fog a mirror. I'm talking a genuine bard, someone who they plied their trade, and their trade was myth. Their trade was legends and epics, and bringing tales of folklore from one realm to another, and making that the way in which they earned their keep. I know I'm romanticizing it a little bit, more than a little bit probably, but that's what a storyteller is to me in the ideal, the bard. Yeah, I wish. Do you like the masterpiece theater kind of thing? Yeah, no kidding. Classic. But no, this is what I do. I'm a storyteller, and that's why when audio first came to Substack, I was a little hesitant, but I thought, you know, it's fine. I can definitely see Substack being a good place for podcasting because there were already people making use of Substack as a place for independent and small press journalism that I thought would make ideal podcasters, and Substack came around. Troll? I don't see any trolls. Maybe I'm on the wrong side. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, podcasters seemed like a natural fit for Substack, and then they came out with video. Now, with standalone video upload capacity, weirdly, I was in the early batch of Substack users selected for early testing of the standalone video upload tool. I was in the batch of the first 300 people they chose to give the option to. I made one quick little video testing it out, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this. At the time, I had really started getting going on BitChute as my primary video upload location. And now that I live stream, I dual stream to Rumble and YouTube through the Rumble's Creator Studio app, and I still primarily utilize BitChute as my standalone upload location. Using Substack for video does not feel like a natural fit for me. Oh, okay. Not a sorry, Tech. Again, neophyte or not neophyte, but Luddite. I'm not overly familiar with all the terminology. Um, but streaming to Substack, I it wouldn't feel like a natural fit for me because I already have a presence on Rumble and YouTube, and BitChute is clunky as shit. And I really wish they would streamline a lot better to it because I'd love to make that another solid place to stream to when I do these break time story times, or when I do like earlier today when I was at home. Little Butt had gone down for her nap, and it was just me and Colin. I propped up my phone into a little one of those air vent clips. You should go back and check it out. Check. I improvised. I don't have a tripod for my phone, but I improvised something, and it worked. And I streamed myself playing a little retro gaming on my SF2000. This is a little handy dandy handheld emulator device that is shaped and fashioned like an old Super Nintendo controller. Um, but it comes with AV plugs, so you can plug it into the back of a television. And it comes with a separate standard remote controller, kind of like an SNES controller. And I sat there and I played I played through a handful of games, just showcasing some of the titles on there that I like to play frequently. So, I mean, I already have, like I said, I've got Rumble and YouTube through the Rumble Studio app for streaming. So I don't know as I really have all that. I don't know if there's that much appeal for me personally to try using Substack to live stream. My worry is that, well, I have a couple of worries, obviously. One of them is that Substack is coming further and further away from what it ostensibly began as, which was a place for people to return to using the written word online as their primary methodology of conveying thoughts and ideas and concepts, stories, articles, what have you. And it feels now like it's trying to be this all encompassing thing. I understand they probably want to get more people on, rope people in with video and with live streaming video so they can garner some more money, either investment capital, venture capital, or get people to more people to sign up as paid subscribers so they can flush themselves with more revenue. Because any of these sites, any of these services, they need revenue in order to maintain functionality. I'm not stupid. I understand the basic economic theorems that go into keeping these things functional. That's just business. That's just reality. It's still, even knowing that, I've got this logical conundrum bouncing around in my head that I understand they want to try to drive more revenue, get more money coming in, so they can continue to operate. But none of the things that they're implementing or that they're bringing about seem to have anything to do with encouraging the art form of the written word. That's, I don't know, distressing, I suppose. But anyhow, that's going to do it for me. I got to get back into work. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading.